Well, so Hassan, I just want to say that I really appreciate that when you needed a Jew to come and, white knight for you on your own stream, that you turned to me. It means a lot to me.
It's
But
because Felix wasn't available.
oh, of course.
Oh no! Wait, hold on. It still says Turning Point UK on top of you from yesterday's guest interview with.
Well, good. No, it's good that we have like all my affiliations out there.
Yeah. No, it's from the Trash Future Pod boys that I recorded with.
Um,
If
no,
first
so,
of all, before we even get started with that, let's just backtrack for 1 second, okay? Before we even get to that, the reason why we haven't been hanging out on the internet as much is because I'm a PC boy now. So just so you know, like if you start playing on the PC, then we can play Apex, and then you can carry me because I'm terrible.
just buy me a computer, my G.
Wait, it doesn't work like that on the writer's salary, dude. You guys aren't.
No, believe me, I have the Digital Storm like desktop like page like bookmarked, but no, it's no. I should become a big boy and start gaming on a PC. I accept it.
It's terrible. It's incredibly difficult. You're gonna hate every moment of it. I don't know how Felix is just like so fucking good at it. I don't know what he did. He keeps telling me to go on Kovacs. What?
He's one, he's good at gaming, and two, he plays a lot.
Yeah, I know. I mean, not all of us have the luxury of recording 2 podcast episodes.
Look, man, athletic talent is also hard to come by, and the dude's got it. Just look at his gaming; it's all there.
I mean, I don't know how he is with Fortnite, but I know his Battlefield stats are insane.
He's very good at Fortnite.
Wait, really?
He's very good at Fortnite. Felix, yes.
I thought
really
Chet
good.
was like the carry. I didn't realize.
But like I wouldn't like Chet's the best, but I wouldn't say that like Michael is also like insanely dirty, but I wouldn't say that like they're like any of them have to be carried. Like they can all hold their own. I mean, like I've only played with like Felix and I think like Michael like once or twice, but they're all very good.
Okay. For those of you in the chat who have no idea who these people are, I'm talking about the Chapo Trap House, Chapo FYM boys. They are another Twitch. They're a leftist Twitch channel that I raid every now and then that you guys probably go to and realize that they rarely interact with the chat and don't have BTTV emotes enabled. So you leave immediately. You're like, oh my God, this is like the normie side of Twitch, even though they're not normies at all. Actually, Eminem Obama, one of the mods on here, is also a host there as well. And Eminem Obama is famous for his memes. I guess that's the best way that I can describe it. I'm trying to merge the two worlds.
Yeah.
Anyway, they're not normies at all. They're really weird, but they're boomer weird. They're like kind of boomer weird.
It's a very homespun kind of weird. It's like bespoke weird.
Oh yeah, bespoke is the perfect word. This is why you're a writer, dude. This is why you get paid the big bucks. Okay, bespoke is the perfect word for it, though. All right, well, they just went live actually. Anyway, so yeah, we'll talk about Apex Legends and stuff. But I already cut you off when you were on a roll. But let's get back to the Ilhan Omar stuff. You were saying some things, so you saw that Chelsea Clinton was.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that like she'd intervened and anything, and I just got mad and I went to bed and I woke up angrier. No, I mean it's just like to address the first part of this because this is like now a multi-stage controversy. To address the first part of it, like what she said was not anti-Semitic. It is a stretch to call it anti-Semitic. It's a real stretch. I think that the canard of like a Jewish conspiracy and Jewish financiers controlling and ruling the world, like Protocols of the Elders of Zion stuff, like that's totally that like as a canard and as a trope, it exists. It's like it's a noxious myth and it is a long and like sordid lineage or whatever. But what Ilhan Omar did was actually use the word AIPAC to describe like the term AIPAC, which is not a Jewish organization. It's not a Jewish organization. She didn't say Jews. She didn't say any of the things that would have identified this as, like an anti-Semitic remark. She talks about AIPAC, and she says that they spend money to, in the case that she was referring to, that AIPAC and organizations like it spend money to support Republicans in Congress, and that the incentive and the reasons for, like, Kevin McCarthy to say that, Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar are, anti-Semitic, is because that's what the donors and the people who are part of the Israel lobby want. Because for them to conflate anti-Zionism like that espoused by Tlaib and Omar, it is important for them to make sure that that is equated with anti-Semitism. Like, that's their agenda.
Yeah. And it fits perfectly because, unlike Bernie Sanders and unlike other like outspoken Jewish members in the past, like it's a bit of a stretch to be like, oh, it's internalized anti-Semitism from the Bernie Sanders camp. But in this instance, they could just easily be like, well, they fit the fucking profile. Look at these brown women.
And today, and also, you don't have to look that far long ago to see like other people who got similar treatment who look a lot like them. Keith Ellison, a black Muslim who was, Ilhan Omar's predecessor in that seat. He was, pro-Israel donors fucking hated him. They lined up against him to try and make sure that he didn't get the DNC job. You had there was a multi-pronged effort to smear Keith Ellison over many years because he chose to do things like vote against the bill that would have funded Iron Dome because it was in the middle of the Gaza atrocities a few years back. You have a pro-Israel establishment that is committed to demonizing and tarring the frequently POC and particularly Muslim members of Congress and opponents of the Israeli government, and it's just rank Islamophobia, and it's the norm. It's de rigueur for this crowd, and I think that it's something that was revealed today and over the past 48 hours that that's what they want, and that this is something that extends. It's it's a sentiment that extends into the leadership of the Democratic Party, which
as we know. And you know what, actually, I want to play that clip. You briefly alluded to that on your Twitter timeline earlier today, but it's like one of my favorite clips to show people that there are certain things where there's bipartisan compromise always, or it's not even a bipartisan compromise. There are certain realities that are established in American political discourse, and it's like the military is constantly going to grow. We are always going to uphold capitalism as best as we possibly can, and the other thing is that both Democrats and Republicans are never going to criticize Israel and increasingly talk about Palestine in more militant and more hostile ways. And the clip I'm referencing, of course, is the AIPAC speech that Chuck Schumer gave. I believe it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I mentioned it last night, but I couldn't find it.
The one last year was the one I saw, and that was the one I referenced.
Yeah, where he talks like he's in fucking Hebrew school or some shit, where he's like, well,
the Torah says that we get the land.
Yeah,
and they don't believe in the Torah. It's like a really crude and racist thing. I don't know. It was that, and then if you go to the AIPAC website, I invite anybody who's watching this to do it. Go to the AIPAC website and look at the clips of all the people who spoke on stage at the AIPAC policy conference over the past few years. Just last year, Steny Hoyer, who is the House Majority Leader, the number 2 Democrat in the House. Steny Hoyer is on stage with who? Kevin McCarthy, the House Minority Leader, who is the person who initiated this whole fucking thing with that, with threatening action against Ilhan Omar for anti-Semitism. And he himself made one of those crazy anti-Semitic, Soros tweets in the run-up to the midterm election. These people are totally in bed with each other in Israel, and AIPAC is the nexus of that. It's not that AIPAC isn't all of the Israel lobby. The Israel lobby is a lot bigger than AIPAC, but it's by far its most significant player, which also just gets to the fundamental accuracy of the point that Ilhan Omar was making in that tweet.
Which is that there are financial which is that there are financial incentives that lobbyists oftentimes offer politicians to promote their values. This is not new. I don't understand how this all of us. I mean, I guess it was because it was the perfect narrative. You have the Somalian refugee wearing a hijab, young congressperson at a time when the old guard is very threatened by the younger talent coming into Congress, and she says and she probably feels the pressure too because of AOC, and she says some shit where she's like, oh, it's all about the Benjamins. And everybody knows she's not talking about like Benjamin Netanyahu or Jews. She's talking about fucking $100 bills. Like, that's so idiotic to assume that that was like anti-Semitic in any way. And then,
I mean, it's like there are levels to why it's like a facile accusation. I guess to me the other thing that's sort of part like the other like thing that's interesting about like the Twitter thing is that I believe 100% that if Ilhan Omar hadn't tweeted that, like all you have to do is look at the Twitter of look him up Lee Zeldin. Like you may have talked about him, but he's an insane Republican. He's also Jewish, and he's been like tweeting crazy racist shit about Ilhan Omar for like the last 2 weeks. Every time like somebody calls his office with an anti-Semitic remark, he's like, Ilhan Omar, like what do you think about this, Ilhan Omar? Huh? You approve this? Do you condone this? Like people were gunning for these people. Like they were gunning for these people already because of what you just referred to, which is
and Talib as well.
Yeah, like in Talib, especially like, the two of them, and I wonder what they have in common. Like he's targeting, like people are targeting them because of this like nascent like divide in the Democratic Party, this like rift that we're now seeing between the like elite, the establishment, the senior old guard Democratic leadership, and newer left-wing members of Congress and elements of the party that are, don't hew to the party line. And Israel is a place where, like, I guess, like the party, like the old guard and like the old ways are, it's at least publicly, they're way more willing to be hardline about it. Like you won't hear Chuck Schumer say the Green New Deal is a fucking joke, and you won't hear Nancy Pelosi go out and say the Green New Deal is a fucking joke.
She did kind of say that.
I mean, they like say it quietly, but they're not like hammering that line.
Yeah.
They're not doing it with the same kind of gusto that they're going out and saying BDS anti-Semitic. Ilhan Omar needs to make amends for saying truth.
I can't believe. Okay, so her statement, Nancy Pelosi's statement after like House Democrats made a big fuss about this tweet, asking the party leadership to come out and like say something, anything, please stop this anti-Semitism.
I would just like to point out that the two Jewish Democratic Congress members who initiated signing that letter, both of them linked and affiliated with AIPAC, have been fundraised for on behalf of by AIPAC. They're like, it's not like it's the Democratic Party has done a hell of a job in the last 2 days to convince people that AIPAC and the pro-Israel lobby don't have any sway over it.
Yeah, they definitely showed everyone how little moneyed interest plays into their to factoring into their decision.
Yeah,
now,
just to what you were saying earlier, yeah.
Yeah. By the way, I'm gonna get into that a little bit further in a second, as far as like how AIPAC has so much power over people, and not just AIPAC, but just like lobbying in general. Alex Koch did an incredible report on Sludge, about like detailing exactly the finances and like how they influence people. There's a bunch of Twitter threads that we can get into, but before we do that, I really want to just like fucking show you guys how similar Chuck Schumer's rhetoric is to any Republican or neocon for that matter when it comes to dealing with Israel. Okay. So yeah, let's just take a look at that really quickly.
Let me tell you why, my view, why we don't have peace. Because the fact of the matter is that too many Palestinians and too many Arabs do not want any Jewish state in the Middle East. The view of Palestinians is simple. Well, the Europeans treated the Jews badly, culminating in the Holocaust, and they gave them our land as compensation. Of course, we say it's our land. The Torah says it. But they don't believe in the Torah. So, that's the reason
Yo, Hassan, hit pause.
Peace. They invent other reasons.
What's up?
Like, Trump could say that. Like, just, like, think about, like, the words he's saying. It's just, like...
Just how childish it is?
Yeah, the cadence is fucking with me. It just sounds like Trump. He's just like with like a Jewy, like a New York, like,
Yeah, he's
Jewish
just like, well, the Torah, like,
Yeah.
they don't believe in the Torah. It's like, dude, how can you base it's just like, how can you base
like,
an ongoing geopolitical conflict?
It's very simple. It's very simple. The Torah, it says it's ours. It's not theirs. They don't believe in the Torah. What are you gonna like? It's such a Like,
It's just like a gigantic geopolitical conflict with like a lot of a lot of financial interest in there as well. And you're just reducing it to, oh well, this land belongs to us because the religious scripture said so, and they just don't believe in it, and that's why it's just never going to come to a close. It's just and of course the ongoing narrative here that Chuck is alluding to, that many other people have like explicitly written about, is that the Arabs are bloodthirsty and they will just never acknowledge that Jewish people have a right to exist in the Middle East. And can ever peaceably exist or coexist in the Middle East alongside Arabs. And that is the justification for the ongoing conflict. That's the real justification for the ongoing conflict, or at least the example that they use, which is really damaging. But again, no different than a Republican.
no.
Yeah. It's just mind-boggling to me, though, dude. Like, it's just fucking nuts. It's really frustrating to see this, and then to see so many liberals. You and I have talked about this before on the show, where so many liberals who are super progressive and like will call out Islamophobia like when they see it, all of a sudden lose their minds or lose all of that perspective. Even leftists sometimes lose that perspective when it comes to Israel, and I don't know why. I just can't.
I mean, a lot of, like, I think I said this last time, but like in the UK, they have a really good like term for this, and it's called PEP, like progressive except for Palestine. And I think a lot of it has to do with like, it has to do with a couple things. The first of which is that it has to do with AIPAC and money, and the fact that like AIPAC has been really effective over the years alongside other organizations and individuals in the Israel lobby at sort of creating an atmosphere where support for Israel is oxygenated, where support for Israel is natural, where it's unthinking, where you don't really have to question it. Because, Israel's this LGBT paradise, because Israel is this place that, gives civil liberties to its citizens that don't exist elsewhere in the Arab world, et cetera, et cetera. Things which are of themselves, by the way, those are all half-truths, like that they become part of a story that you can tell about Israel that can, that a lot of like, I think like mostly centrists, but also like centrist liberals are able to like then rationalize. Like it can make sense in their brain. And there wasn't really an effective like counter like to that. There wasn't like a real left presence like sending a different message. And then the second thing is that it's also because a lot of this does just fit in naturally with the worldview of a lot of liberals. Think of all the Democrats who voted for the Iraq War. Think of all the Democrats who support, like, the members of the Obama administration who supported like the perpetual drone strikes and arming the Saudis and all these other things, like noxious things that we do abroad. Like support, like blind support for the Israeli government, like absolutely, like that totally fits within that worldview. I think it's just like what we've constantly been talking about is that what's just coming into view now is that this is actually really bad, and there's like a number of reasons that it's sort of coming to the surface, and that even people in institutions that otherwise wouldn't necessarily question this are now questioning like all of this bullshit and are beginning to wonder, like, have we dug ourselves into a hole with our support for Israel in this way? But I think that like in the Israeli government, but I do think that like it makes a certain amount of sense to me.
Yeah. Well, it's also frustrating because it's virtually career suicide at any level. And AIPAC has been at the forefront of this, right? And this is something I wanted to talk about as far as like the international perspective. Like progressives all around the world, a lot of progressives who are like leftists or socialists and whatnot, oftentimes have a similar perspective when it comes to Israel. They're very critical of the Israeli occupation. They're very critical of all of the atrocious human rights abuses that the IDF conducts on a regular basis. And I've talked about this extensively last night as far as like the way Israel is treating immigrants and how similar it is to America, and even in some ways more brutal than how America is treating the refugees at their borders, right? And this is now, I feel like, becoming the perfect way to attack leftists because of their like anti-Zionist or at least like critical approach to Israel and settler terrorism and the way they've conducted themselves in Gaza, like the increasingly violent way they deal with the millions of people living in the largest open air prison on the fucking planet. I think this is the whole, like, if you're anti-Zionist or if you're critical of Israel, that means you're anti-Semitic, is going to be the way that they can hurt progressives. And they've done it with Jeremy Corbyn, and they've been trying to do that with Jeremy Corbyn, and now I think they're doing that with Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, and even with AOC probably at some point. You muted yourself. You're muted.
Now I'm back. There's like, I have one qualifier to that, which is that, like, you can, that's what you expect the Republicans to do. That's what the right wing has always done, and it's what they're going to continue to do. Like, like I've been called a self-hating Jew and an enemy of the people for like a long time. And I don't mean that as like, some like way to inflate my ego. It's just like, natural if you're somebody who espouses these views publicly, either in writing or in like, Jewish community spaces or even like democratic political spaces. But what's new in the Democratic circle and what's new here is that you see, because of like the new way that like in the last few years that we've begun talking about making sure that like the Democratic Party is sufficiently inclusive and representative of represents the interests of all sorts of different, minorities in American society, whether it's queer people, black people, Hispanic people. There's a degree to which we also have a lot like in a justifiable way, we've allowed people to say like, hey, listen, man, you're not black. Like, why are you going to be the one talking? Like, who are you to say what constitutes anti-blackness? Who are you to say like this isn't racist or something? And a lot of that same kind of deference gets shown to the American Jewish establishment and not to American Jews. And so you cease to evaluate these claims of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism, these frequently bullshit, spurious claims on their own merits, because we're deferring to a group of people who don't reflect the view of the majority, who mainly represent like, narrow private donor interests, or whose agenda is completely different and is people in public life like Chuck Schumer, who don't need the AIPAC money to believe that what they believe, because he earnestly he earnestly supports it.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of like that, like the Democrats and that like liberals are going to be doing this, and that they're going to use like progressive language as a shield. It's to me the thing that makes me most angry right now, because it feels like such a nasty hypocrisy, and it's from people who openly claim to be above it.
So that you bring up a good point that I want to get into, because there's a little bit of confusion around how AIPAC is actually like funding members or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. It's an important distinction to make. Is that AIPAC is not going out and like directly giving campaign finances or giving campaign funds or donations to politicians. They're doing this indirectly with their membership clubs, where in order to become a member, you have to donate to the specific. You have to donate to like specific people that they want you to donate to, and as soon as you do that, you've established a connection with that person. And their goal is to be able to have any this is a stated goal. This is not like something I'm making up. Is to have any politician be a phone call away when it comes to matters that pertain to Israel, right? And one of the more famous AIPAC donors, of course, is Haim Saban. You guys might recognize that name because he has a semi-annual leadership conference that AIPAC hosts for him. He has spent, I believe, $16 million on Democratic candidates, on just like Democratic PACs in 2016, and then another. Where's that number? Hold on, I'm going to tell you exactly what that number is. And another $3.3 million on outside Democratic political groups in 2018. So this guy is very wealthy. He had some of you might have seen him. Some of you might have seen him on stage with Jared Kushner, talking about how much of a good boy Jared Kushner was for all of the things that they did as far as like moving the embassy to Jerusalem and stuff. Like, these are very important goals for people like Haim Saban, and then also on the Republican side, people like Sheldon Adelson. Sheldon, who is the largest independent donor with $123 million that he spent on Republican PACs, and and Sheldon, who started his own group after AIPAC wasn't hardline enough, because in 2007, AIPAC still had the position that Palestine deserved some aid. And they've since then they've
it's that AIPAC operates like AIPAC says that, like, we support the two-state solution because officially on paper after the Oslo Accords and after Camp David, like, that was the position of the American government and the Israeli government. And so because both governments agreed on it, AIPAC said it's a nonpartisan position to support the two-state solution. The problem is that the Israeli government no longer has to pretend that they want a two-state solution, and Sheldon Adelson is, thinks that AIPAC is too chicken shit to do anything about it. So that's why he moved to the right of them. It's like why it's how he has helped move the discourse to the right. In fact, AIPAC is scared of people like Sheldon Adelson, and he's scared, and they're a little bit apprehensive of the kind of extremism that people like Adelson support or represent, because they're afraid that those people are the ones who are going to be the ones to crack the bipartisan consensus that they've so carefully constructed over the years. And I think that that's a really interesting tension there. I don't know how long it's going to last, and I don't know if AIPAC will ultimately just cave, because that might be what's easier for them as they sense where the power shifts and as the Democratic Party just becomes less hospitable in time to the AIPAC line. But it's definitely that sort of aggressive independent financial spending. I mean, it's funny. The Israel lobby is incredibly powerful and it gets its way quite often, but it contains multitudes.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely, just like with, if I think you and I talked about this before too, just like there are more militant elements within the Israeli Knesset that are further to the right than Netanyahu, right? If I'm not mistaken, there are people
Powerful
who,
ones.
there are
might succeed him if he goes to jail.
Yeah, there are certainly people who are further to the right than AIPAC as well. Now, my point is, if there's no collective action against this overwhelming amount of financial support pushing for one position here in America, where money is speech, and it goes a long way as we've seen. What is there to stop AIPAC from also taking a more hardline approach? You know what I mean? There's no incentive for them to even act like they give a shit about a two-state solution or a peaceable solution, especially on the ground.
There is, to a point, because the idea is that look at S1, this bill, the anti-BDS bill. So this is this bill that the Senate passed, and the Senate and the
first thing they passed, by the way.
Yeah. Before the Republicans were trying to shove it through before the government was open.
Matter of utmost importance.
Yeah, right. And the bill includes this provision that affirms states' rights to, and affirms government's right, like American government's rights to not do business and not sign contracts with any entity that boycotts Israel.
Yeah.
And it's a huge First Amendment problem. There's an NAACP lawsuit that was decided by the Supreme Court in the early 80s that affirms that the right to boycott is protected speech. The Republicans and the authors of S1, which included a lot of Democrats and its supporters, in this bill contend that boycotting Israel is fundamentally anti-Semitic, which is fucking absurd. But to my earlier point, the bill passed by a margin of 79-14 or something. There were a few no votes. A few Republicans voted against it.
Feinstein and Bernie were vocal no votes originally.
Booker didn't vote for it. Kamala Harris didn't vote for it. Gillibrand voted no, to her credit. Klobuchar voted yes. I think she's the only 2020 person who voted yes on it. But of a lot of the party, it's a lot of votes that AIPAC is able to get in the Senate on something like this. In the House,
on something that fundamentally goes against the American principle of freedom of speech, something that they espouse, something that they talk about so fucking much, about how much they love freedom of speech.
Constantly, yeah. And so it's I believe that there is an incentive for AIPAC to try and maintain this consensus, because it's where they draw an enormous amount of their power. I think the problem that AIPAC has, though, is that increasingly, that's the past. In the future, that number of lock votes that they have in the Senate, it's going to go down. And you can sort of imagine what that looks like. Take a look at New Jersey, for example. One of AIPAC's staunchest supporters in the new Senate is Bob Menendez from New Jersey.
Oh, I know.
Menendez won re-election on a much closer margin than he should have, because he was tried for corruption and was acquitted by like the skin of his teeth. And so there's like Bob Menendez is this giant AIPAC supporter, somebody whose support for AIPAC is totally outsized compared to like what he could reasonably do and how progressive a senator New Jersey could be expected to elect. I think that like whoever replaces Bob Menendez is just because of the nature of the times and just because of what each successive generation of Democratic like Congress members look like and senators look like, it will probably not be somebody who's as sympathetic to AIPAC's interests. It's not going to be somebody who would, like Menendez did, voted against the Iran deal in 2015. I think, which is what AIPAC, something that AIPAC aggressively tried to stop.
Yeah,
I think that you're going to see more people like that, like get voted out. And so AIPAC has to contend with like a Democratic power center whose power is over time likely going to diminish. Is it going to diminish in a way that like, means that Israel lobby is still like, like not powerful in Democratic circles? No, but it's just like clearly waning in some sense. And so it like they're like they do have they're caught in a bind. They want to maintain that power center, but they also have to acknowledge that like the future of pro-Israel is, it's on the right. It's evangelical Zionists who are already the most vocal and important contingent. It's the kingdoms of Saudi Arabia and the UAE, which are strategically allied with Israel under NBC and MBS. It's the defense industry who benefits greatly from a $38 billion military aid package to a country that has advanced defense and intelligence sharing relationships with the U.S. government and thus U.S. contractors.
And also proxy wars that will continue in the region for geopolitical power between the coalition of Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the United States against the Kingdom of Qatar, which changes sides, I guess, sometimes, but in Iran and Turkey and Russia and maybe even China. And this is, again, like you said, ongoing revenue for the military-industrial complex.
There's like a whole machination, like there's like an entrenched like set of institutions and agendas that aren't just going to go away. But the Democratic voter sentiment and Democratic voter buy-in that used to previously exist on unflinching support, American support for the Israeli government, that's diminishing, and its days are numbered. And so the Democratic Party is going to have to contend with the fact that its voters' position, at least its base's position, is different than what the party line has been. And, you see the same kind of conflict, the same dynamic playing out in all sorts of other areas. The Green New Deal, Medicare for all, busting up the big banks, and so on. And there's varying degrees of give and take. What distinguishes the stuff about Israel just has to do with the fact that like the party leadership is so publicly willing. What we've seen this week, that what distinguishes it is that the party leadership is publicly willing to take its own members to the woodshed over this issue and over people who step out of line. And they're willing to do so in ways that are incredibly damaging in terms of like, not just on Israel specifically, but are incredibly damaging in how we talk about anti-Semitism and how we talk about the racism of the right and how we talk about who actually suffers under who actually suffers from anti-Semitism and who's targeted by it.
And damaging politically too, like even from a pragmatic perspective. Remember how the establishment Democrats, or at least the Democratic voters, dogpiled on Kirsten Gillibrand for pursuing the Al Franken resignation after the Me Too era scandals were coming out about Al Franken, and yet they were so willing and able to just throw away the newest, like, very important Muslim congressperson and just discard her as if she's some disposable person because of something that she didn't even like. Not because she said some like legitimately anti-Semitic shit. In which case this would be an entirely different conversation, but because she said AIPAC has influence over Republican congresspersons, something that AIPAC themselves admit to.
It's the point of their existence.
Yeah.
Their slogan is America's pro-Israel lobby. What does lobbying do? It is using money it's influencing. It's just influence. That's what it is. Like in AIPAC's case, money is one part of it. Not every lobby is like centered on money, but like they're that's their bread and butter. There's no to deny it is like denying a fucking law of gravity. It's you're doing it because you're cynically saying it to win something, not because you actually can logically come to that conclusion.
Yeah, it's And by the way, I recommend The Lobby if you guys haven't watched it. This is like, I used a couple parts of that documentary that Al Jazeera came out with that they couldn't release due to public pressure, but it investigates all of the interesting background into AIPAC. There are interviews with. Wait, where's that noise coming from on your end?
No, me, I was rubbing my beard. That's all that was.
Okay. Jesus Christ.
I can rub my beard into the mic some more if you want.
No, it's good. Please don't do that. Anyway, as I was saying, I mean, there's like an interview that's really eye-opening with Eric Gallagher, who was a director at AIPAC, where he like straight up is like, look, my entire job at AIPAC is to facilitate a $38 billion arms deal so that we ensure giving Israel $38 billion in defense and aid. And that's like my job. That's my job, is to do that and apply pressure to congresspersons that through financial incentives and whatnot. And they're very open about it. I mean, this is how the lobbying industry works. This is not like
this is
just
how
because.
it all works.
What?
It's how it all works. And
Yeah.
It's like. I think one of the things that like it's difficult is that there is a fundamental discomfort for very obvious and justified reasons about Jews and money and influence.
Yeah.
But the real anti-Semitic conflation is to fundamentally associate Israel in the interests of the Israeli government and its allies in America with the interests of Jews. Like, I think that it's a distinction that has to be made and has to be important, and that we have to accept at face value, because if we don't, then we just let the right and we let Democrat, sold out Democrats on this issue to like dictate the direction of the conversation and dictate how policy gets made. Like, that's what happens. Like, I was very upset and very frustrated by a number of lefty individuals and the statements of a bunch of organizations that are ostensibly liberal leaning. Ben the Arc, J Street.
What did J Street say? Yeah, I thought J Street was supposed to be.
That they appreciated her apology and that they thought it was really good and that they believe her in Trust and Grow, and that it was just like she shouldn't have had to apologize in the first place.
I know.
There is no apology that should have been made. She didn't say anything. But they're like everybody wants to I feel like Tony Soprano in the pilot when he's like, everybody's got to do this and everybody's all that, not fun cool, and it's just the same fucking deal. It's like everybody's got to appeal and make sure that we didn't offend anybody who claims to have could have possibly been offended by this remark. We got to make sure that everybody feels respected. We got to do this. We got to do that, and they buy into the bullshit. Because it is bullshit. Because she didn't say anything anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
And it's indefensible that it is. It's indefensible to make the claim that it was anti-Semitic.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. People were trying to say, what if it was the NAACP talking about what if you're criticizing the NAACP and talking about watermelons? And I was like, okay, dude, here's why that's not fucking the same. Because we're talking about lobbying, okay? We're talking about lobbying. Lobbying is intrinsically about moneyed interest. It's about fucking powerful, wealthy people controlling legislators. And this is something we talk about regularly, something that I talk about regularly. So when I see this in my fan base, when I see them so blinded by the fact that just because this is a not even a Jewish organization, mind you, just an Israeli organization, an organization that is supposed to maintain the interests of Israel, it turn around and be like, "Whoa, this is anti-Semitic because Jews and money. That's a trope. Sorry, you can never criticize it." It reminds me a lot of J.K. Rowling telling on herself. Remember when she was saying stuff
yes.
Oh, when you say 1%ers, you mean Jews. It's like, no,
that's a you problem.
No, literally not a single person except for very racist people.
You made nosed goblins, the bankers in your
yeah.
Yes. Those that's that I can't imagine what stereotype you were invoking there. It's I would appreciate on some level also if there was a degree of honesty about this, which is just that because part of it is that there are a number of people who are leveling the anti-Semitism allegation because they are they earnestly believe that this is anti-Semitic. And if I can't convince those people otherwise, then God willing, they're my political opponents. They're opponents of progress, whatever. But there are a number of people who are trying to have both sides of this and who are trying to claim, and I think you see this sort of among the kind of standard Democratic Party line, where you see them say, look, she said something wrong. she said something wrong and she fucked up, and the left, there's some anti-Semites here and we got to address it. But look at those white supremacists and the Trump hypocrisy. And it's like, you got half the equation right. That second part, that part where you talk about the white supremacy and the Republicans, that's totally true. But when you're talking about like the Democratic Party and the need to apologize, you are like admittedly buying into a set of assumptions about how anti-Semitism works and how it exists on the left that are fundamentally false. And I think that it does a real disservice to people who are trying to meaningfully address like the real sources of anti-Semitism in this country, which, as one might expect, are with the people who are living the legacy of like swastika armbands and shit, and LARPing and Fred Perry polos in the streets.
Well,
of
it also erases the fucking hundreds of thousands of Jews who are in opposition to like the incredibly violent things that the IDF does. Like it's just like, all right, fuck off. We don't care about your voice because the wealthiest people are like, nope, doesn't matter. We think that Palestinians need to be genocided. So, that's the perspective of Israel now. Sucks to suck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say that it's off. Oh, okay. Well, before you go, last question. All right, last question. Damn. So this was really fun, by the way. Thank you for coming on. And
I've had a blast. This has been really tough.
Yeah, thank God for you to come on and fucking tell everyone that I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm just kidding. I'm fucking around. It doesn't matter. I've written extensively on Israel already.
No, I know.
People who think I'm anti-Semitic think I'm anti-Semitic already. I don't know how. I mean, I spend the majority of my time shitting on Nazis, but whatever.
Well, Hassan, just in case, just so you know, I think you're anti-Semitic, and that's all that matters.
Oh, okay, good. The last question I had for you is, and this is a hard one to answer, I know, but what do you think is the percent? Like, how big of a constituency is there for Jewish Americans and Jews around the world who are against some of the things that Israel is doing in comparison to like people who are pro-Israel no matter what, and that Israel can do nothing wrong?
I'd say a couple of things. I'd say first is that like it should be clear that like this conversation should not be constructed on like as the first part of the answer to that is like I think that like this conversation should not be constructed on like sort of what Jews do, in the sense that like this isn't about like like can Jewish Americans rally to like right the ship, and are there enough Jews who oppose the Israeli government to call this bullshit out? Because I think that like the answer is that it will always be insubstantial. American Jews are like 2% of the American population. Of that 2%, a huge number are just people who are totally disengaged and aren't going to give a shit about this either way. And of those who are engaged, it is a minority who are in the position that I'm in. Like, just straight up. I don't think that, like, the consensus opinion is nearly as right-wing as where the establishment is and where, like, major Jewish organizations are. But, like, to be clear, I'm in a minority. The bigger issue is, when will people start listening to like the cries for Palestinian freedom? When are people going to listen to those who are suffering, and when are they going to adequately like respect the rights and wishes and real needs of Palestinian people? And I don't think that that's like I think that there are a large number of Jews who can be on their side and can ultimately like be on the right side of history. I think that Jewish institutions can make that leap, and some of them can. I think a lot of them, the American Jewish establishment is just like fundamentally lost to time on this one. But I think that like the challenge and the real opportunity is in sort of making Palestine and making Palestinian freedom once again like a central demand of like a left foreign policy agenda that is like something that we are actively talking about and thinking about and caring about, like scaling back American imperial interests, like that, making sure that Palestine is part of that and centering it. Because I think that it's an issue. It's like relatively uncomplicated in that the American government funding Israel in the way that it does, $38 billion over 10 years in military aid, we are the reason the occupation continues to exist. And the moment that the American government chooses to turn off the money spigot to Israel, we can start or at least threatens to, we can start forcing Israel to do things. Nathan Thrall, a wonderful scholar on this issue, who wrote a really good book called The Only Language They Understand, makes this really great argument about how force is the only way that we've ever pushed the Israeli government to do things. Threatening to condition aid, diplomatic downgrades, diplomatic relationship downgrades, and so on. Actually doing things to force the Israeli to act, they'll respond. They're fucking crazy right-wingers, but they're also rational human beings who, when presented with the fact that we will lose billions of dollars in necessary aid unless we stop oppressing Palestinians, they'll stop oppressing Palestinians. The question is, how do we make sure that we have like a coalition, like that political agenda is like part of, you know, like a is part of like the like is part of what is like a like the left agenda and part of the Democratic Party agenda.
Yeah.
And that's the bigger concern. I try not to think about this in terms of like winning over Jews. That said, I work for a Jewish magazine, so definitionally I kind of do that. But like my plea is that, you know, we think a bit bigger than that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. I don't want to keep you anymore. I know you're
Nah, man.
I know you're a popular guy. You got a fresh new haircut, got a beard cut. You're looking sexy as fuck, dude. You're about to go hit the town, I'm guessing.
Yeah, man, I'm gonna go hit the town and probably have some Oreos and talk to my folks.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, dude.
No,
All right.
man, it was awesome.
I will
And
make a return.
and tell your viewers to check out Jewish Currents,
Yes.
JEWISH currents.org. And if you like what you see, please subscribe. It's only $18. You get 4 issues a year. We have a new one coming out really soon. It's going to be really sick. It touches on a lot of the same stuff here. And if you like what I've been talking about, go to our website. We have a lot more articles like this.
I'm gonna spam it in the chat right now. Also, can you give him your socials as well? Noah's very funny.
Yeah.
When
so
he's not.
I'm on Twitter. My handle is twitter.com/NKULW. You can also just like search my name and I'll probably come up. Noah Colwyn.
Wait, hold on. Let me write that again. Twitter.com/wait, hold on. Let me.
NKULW.
If one of the mods can find that and spam it, that would be great. Because my computer is like tanking for some weird reason. But anyway.
Cool. Thanks for having me on, man.
All right. Yo. All right.
Peace,
dude. Okay. Oops. All right, guys. Where the fuck is my slobs, dude? Okay, here it is. So that was all right, so let's hear it. Let's hear it from all of the I didn't really look at what do you call it? I didn't really look at what you guys were.
God.
Whatever.
Bowie Z said whatever. Noah wrote an awesome article on this yesterday. I highly recommend you guys you guys check that out. What is this? Did you look at the Stefan Molyneux tweet? No, I haven't. Hold on. Let's just fucking let that settle in for a second, okay? Holy shit. You guys are like ready to move on to the next topic already. Jesus Christ, guys. I'm still over here trying to find Noah's fucking Twitter so I can spam that in the chat too, because he's brilliant. He's a lot smarter than I am. He's a really good writer too, and an awesome lefty. So I highly recommend you guys check his shit out and go give him a follow and show him some love. Okay. Anyway. Okay. What scent is your air freshener? I don't know what scent it is. Have red kahina on. I don't know who that is. Isn't that like a meme? I feel like I've heard that name on Chapo before, but I don't know who that is. Anyway, so let me just go through really quickly the video that I did on this as well that dives a little bit deeper into the financial, like the way that AIPAC actually does dictate legislation or incentivizes politicians to take to make specific decisions on matters that pertain to Israel. And hold on, where is it? Let me see if that video is available already, because if it is, we're just gonna take a look at it really quickly. Hold on, what the fuck is going on? My laptop is just so. My desktop is butt cheeks, everybody. Blacklisted academic Norman Finkelstein on Gaza, the world's largest concentration camp. Yes. Norman Finkelstein is someone that I look up to when it comes to matters that relate to Israel. I feel like the two-state solution is increasingly impossible with war and genocide between Israelis and Palestinians due to settlers in the West Bank. I think extending citizenship and ending the apartheid state in Israel with a one-state solution is the only option. What do you think about the one-state versus two-state option? I used to be, when I was younger, a big advocate for a two-state solution. My perspective has changed on this. I don't know what Noah's perspective is. I'd love to hear it, but I guess for another time. But yeah, my perspective has shifted. I'm now a one-state boy, okay?
I don't know. I know that, like, getting $38 billion in security aid to Israel matters, which is what AIPAC
Whoa. What is going on?
Following his unreleased documentary.
Okay, hold up. Okay, let's take a look at my latest video on this matter. Okay, guys? Let's watch. It's titled, Ilhan Omar said nothing wrong.
Does the war of ideas matter? I don't know. I know that, like, getting $38 billion in security aid to Israel matters, which is what AIPAC just did. That's what I'm proud to have been a part of for so long.
Following his unreleased documentary footage by Al Jazeera. It was never released due to intense political pressure by the Israeli government. This is Eric Gallagher. He was a director at AIPAC. Let's ask Eric what his job at AIPAC was.
My job was basically to convince students that participating in the war of ideas on campus is actually a distraction. You can hold up signs and have rallies on campus, but the Congress gets $3.1 billion a year for Israel. Everything AIPAC does is focused on influencing Congress. Congress is where you have leverage, so you can't influence the President of the United States directly, but the Congress can.
So why the hell did this happen to Ilhan Omar?
A freshman Democrat in Congress forced to apologize after members of both parties accused her of anti-Semitism for tweeting, "It's all about the Benjamins, baby," suggesting lawmakers are being bribed to support the country of Israel.
In a separate tweet, she singled out the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, one of the most influential lobbying groups in Washington. AIPAC is a nonprofit and does not donate directly to candidates, but its members often do.
And Congressman McCarthy, who has in the past taken advantage of the actual anti-Semitic trope of shadowy Jewish puppet master George Soros to get people out to vote, was outraged. He was very offended, ma'am. How dare anyone point out that a lobbying group exclusively created to promote Israeli interests is doing exactly that through financial incentives? But I'm sure the spineless Democrats will back Ilhan Omar, right? Right? Wrong.
A newly elected member of Congress is apologizing for criticizing supporters of Israel after a blast from her own party leadership.
Yesterday, her House Democratic colleagues circulated a letter calling on leadership to take action on what they called hateful speech. And House Speaker Nancy Pelosi did just that, issuing her own blistering statement calling Omar's tweets anti-Semitic and deeply offensive.
Good job, Democrats. This was totally not an insane overreaction to a very normal statement to make about AIPAC and lobbying. So let's break it down. Now, does AIPAC literally directly go out and pay off politicians? No, it's a bit more nuanced than that. AIPAC spent $5 million on lobbying efforts beyond campaign contributions in 2018, and this number is nothing in comparison to the $123 million spent by Sheldon Adelson and his wife Miriam, who parted ways with AIPAC in 2007 due to AIPAC's position on Palestinian aid and created their own hardline Israel lobby in 2017. And the reason why I mention Adelson is because he is one of the many people who actually do fund the politicians. This is how AIPAC ends up funding the politicians, not directly, but through their membership programs. Another person on the other side of the political spectrum with similar goals is Haim Saban. Now, you might remember him from hosting the semi-annual Saban Leadership Seminar where he praised Jared Kushner on what a good boy he had been. Now, Saban and his wife are Democrats, and they spent $3.3 million on Democratic political groups in 2018 and close to $14 million in 2016. And if you think I'm being anti-Semitic and calling out Jewish billionaires, well, I'm not. Both of the people I use as an example talked about how they're single-issue guys, and their single issue is Israel. But of course, the mention of any of this is ruining a nuanced conversation surrounding lobbying, if you ask our mainstream media operatives. A nuanced conversation that's now being weaponized by Trump who asked Omar to resign.
And I think she should either resign from Congress or she should certainly resign from the House Foreign Affairs Committee.
Yeah, guys, let's just dunk on the scary hijabi Somalian refugee congressperson. Warranted criticism of Israel is an offense that can cause you to lose your job, and this double standard of free speech is frequently thrown in our faces. AIPAC is actively and openly pushed for legislation that's against BDS, a controversial organization that promotes boycotts against Israel for its inhumane treatment of Palestinians. This is a direct violation of the First Amendment, as BDS is completely nonviolent. And now the president is calling for the resignation of a congressperson over something he himself has told the Republican Jewish coalition when he said that they wouldn't support him because he wouldn't take their money. Trump also used obvious, actual anti-Semitic tropes during that conversation, like telling a room full of Jewish people that he's a negotiator like you folks. But that's an entirely different story. Now, do I think Ilhan Omar should be more careful? Yes. As the first hijab-wearing Somalian congressperson, she is 100% under a microscope. But the civility politics, the reaction of virtue signalers on the right, and the cynical punditry which links back criticism of Israel, any criticism of Israel whatsoever, to anti-Semitism is getting really old, guys. I'm Hassan Piker. If you like this video, please share it with your friends and